Welcome to the Silicon Fox podcast, where we explore the habits and stories of high performers. I'm your host, Mitchell Eschner. Well, Josh, thank you so much for hopping on the Silicon Fox podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Excited to kick
In
this
lovely
off.
Chattanooga.
Yeah. Not
First.
Oh, really?
Yeah, dude. It's my first time being in Chattanooga.
How long have you been in Nashville?
Almost 4 years, but I grew up my first 13 years of my life. I was in North Carolina, so I loved like the smoky mountain scene. So it was pretty cool driving in.
I guess you got to go through that. Yeah, I know people move here for like all the rock climbing stuff and everything else. I always like to start these by just giving you the chance to give us like a quick rundown. What are you working on? What's your background? I mean, we knew now where you grew up, but outside of that, just give us the rundown.
I mean, professionally, 17 years in healthcare. Worked for a large med device company called Stryker for about 5 years, and then I've been an entrepreneur and anything in healthcare for the last 12, and range from owning and operating labs and compounding pharmacies to regenerative medicine clinics. I had 4 of those, and then prior to COVID, they were doing really well, and we were cranking, doing close to 25 million in revenue between 4 clinics. And we were treating osteoarthritis, so degenerative, disease states that happen in your 50s and 60s. And once COVID hit, that patient population didn't leave the house, and they weren't spending money on elective procedures. Our procedures range from $6,000 to $10,000, and really kind of changed the whole trajectory of that business. We shut down for 90 days, like literally closed our doors, didn't market, and we turned it back on. And it was just a really arduous process. But in hindsight, it's why I started Blokes, why we started Joy, because it was the first time that I was able to slow down, take some pressure off mentally, physically, listen to my wife because she was going to divorce me because I had no sex drive. And I went and saw a bunch of different medical doctors and primary care and internal med, and figured out that I had all these bad things going on with my health. I was 55 pounds overweight, had no sex drive, and that was ultimately what started Joy and Blokes.
Oh, and so what is Joy and Blokes now today? What do you guys do? What's been the progression from Genesis to now?
We were kind of like a little bit of a few different things: diagnostic company, longevity company, menopause, perimenopause, rooted in diagnostic care. And we look at ourselves as a preventative and proactive care company. So, if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and you're feeling the effects of aging, and we're kind of that go-to, like we're function health with solutions. We're HIMSS with the soul.
So what specifically though do you guys do? Is it like blood labs? You'll do like what are the proactive mechanisms?
Yeah, we blood labs. We're an inch wide, a mile deep in blood labs. So anywhere from 55 to 110 biomarkers. Every one of our diagnostics comes with a 30-minute to an hour clinician consultation. All of our clinicians are trained in integrative, functional, or perimenopause and menopause specialties. And then we pair those with selective treatments ranging from testosterone for men and women. Women need testosterone just like men. Progesterone, estrogen, and clomiphene for men, which is a phenomenal therapy that works so well for men under 50 years old typically. Peptide therapy, so Smorlin, NAD+, glutathione, B12, and then we round it out with supplements. And the way we look at our supplements is they're really driven by your biomarker data and really driven by your symptoms. And our clinicians help pair you with the right supplements. When you're doing supplements with precision, they're extremely effective.
Sure. So you go from assessment, blood lab, to clinician gives you kind of this action plan, which is calibrates like what's the patient experience over the course of a few years. I mean, it helped you, it seems, but how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, it's to some extent it's driven by the therapy.
Yeah.
And then the other pieces are driven by the patient and the clinician. For example, you're on testosterone replacement. You're meeting with our clinicians 4 to 6 times a year. You're getting your labs done 4 to 6 times a year because we're really trying to dial you in.
Yeah.
The same with some hormones like clomiphene and progesterone. But we really kind of, what we try to do is put the patient in the driver's seat. Like there's a lot of groups out there. It's like, it's membership driven. You're getting billed no matter whether you're using the service or not. We kind of meet a happy medium. Like the therapy dictates whether it's a subscription or a membership. And then other than that, it's kind of a la carte and land and expand with the consumer.
Got it. And this is like to date, like most platforms similar to this, is out of pocket. Consumers kind of own the journey here and will do it themselves rather than the clinical route.
Yeah, partially because of necessity. The other piece is, we'd love to take insurance. We'd love to be able to offer these.
Yeah, yeah.
They're just not
Yeah,
covered.
yeah, yeah. No,
I mean,
it's more of like a macro, like you fit into this category rather
yep,
than this one. Not that. Yeah, of course you
yeah,
should be reimbursed. I
yeah,
agree with
totally.
that. Well, cool. I mean, so one thing I'm really fascinated by when companies in your space, and really curious as to how you think about this, is the macro here. And so, like macroeconomically, a lot of companies are starting to do blood labs, and it seems like we're just talking off camera about this as to, like some of these cool new things that you guys are doing to build, defensibility here and build kind of this new edge. How do you think about that? Like blood labs are getting really commoditized to some extent, which is great. I think like businesses that maybe make it cheaper, more fun, do a lot of marketing. We constantly have negative things to say about them, but the positive is like this is changing user behavior. Like everybody's now getting blood labs and being proactive. How do you think about these next few steps, like macro? We reference companies, Hims, Row, Function, whatever it is. At some point, like these blood labs get incredibly cheap, and so now we're not taking margin here. How do you think about?
I think they're over indexed. I think they're overutilized.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm all for the competitive nature of it, but I'm seeing companies that are just coming in this space saying, "Hey, you need your blood labs checked every month."
yeah,
I think they are commoditized, but I think they're over indexed. I think blood is something that should be done by every individual, especially when you're in your 30s, 40s, and 50s. And typically, what we say is no less than one annual blood draw. More than likely two. But I think they're becoming over commoditized. It worries me a little bit because
yeah,
I think we're going to have, and I think I'm already starting to see this just with the overall just sentiment. Like I think you're seeing like a blood saturation that you've never seen before. And all of a sudden everybody's like, oh my God, I got to get my blood labs done. I got to get this, but they
yeah,
have no reason why.
yeah.
I think the player that wins in the long run is the one that builds out an
The
ecosystem around
ecosystem.
it.
Yeah,
And not just I think data is useless as if you can't put an action behind it, if you can't understand it, if you can't extrapolate that data, I think it's useless. And that's to some extent what I'm seeing in the space with a lot of blood companies that are coming out. I'm not saying there's not some use cases for it, but you got to be able to put that blood to action.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the actionable component's huge. How do you think about like that next phase? So let's say we do live in a world where it does get commoditized, whether people are doing it once a month, twice a year, once a year, whatever it is. The cost drives down. Blood labs are getting less and less. From a business perspective, it's obviously difficult because now this is like everybody's doing it. The interpretation and then the actual implementation is something I'm fascinated by, because wearables, for example, is a good analogy here. To some extent, they got us thinking about our sleep. Like this was something that was relatively not new. Now, there's lots of studies on they're anxiety inducing, and you look at your sleep score and it psychs you out, whatever it is. Like there's negatives for sure, but positively on a mass scale across society, it made us start to think about sleep. But did it really change behavior? Was kind of the next question, and we are yet to see that happen because some of the studies coming out and like, are people getting net healthier? Are people sleeping better? No, right? In the past like 10 years, is that really the case? We haven't seen credible research as to why. So how do you go about solving this incentivization of actual action? Because you can provide lots of data. You can give them biomarkers, you can give them the plan. What's really hard that I'm constantly finding across health companies, especially running one, is how do you get the user to actually follow these plans with clinicians, take the supplementation, even if it's so calibrated for them?
Yeah. I to your comment, like we are unhealthier than we've ever been, and we have more access to data. We have more access to science than we've ever had. So something is fundamentally off. I've done wearables. I've kind of found them to just be more like analysis paralysis for me. I can only speak to like my journey and what we see here, but I do think there is a massive aspect of getting somebody to take the first step,
Yeah,
whether it's getting them to recognize that they even need a blood draw or need to take action in a blood draw, recognizing symptoms. So like that's one hurdle. Then
for sure.
getting them to actually do it is another. And to your point, what do you do with that after that? For us, like we think the magic sauce is that all of it together.
Yeah,
That experience has to be flawless. It has to be frictionless. But one of the benefits of meeting with a clinician, being heard, being like understanding your biomarkers, looking at the data is one thing, but then having somebody put that to action and understand it and then put it into motion is to me the most valuable thing. I've literally taken my exact labs,
yeah.
putting them through Chat GPT and said, oh, wow, that's interesting. And then I've had the exact same labs and I've had a clinician appointment, and all of a sudden the dots just connected. So many people right now have tons of data, but they have so many other questions that are from that data. The benefit of having a full suite of services, and services to me that work really well, like you could come to me and you could say, Josh, that product doesn't work. And I'd
Yeah.
go, yeah, doesn't work that often. But if you came to me and said different things, different therapies don't work, I'd tell you you're lying because they absolutely work. Getting small wins quickly in this space is huge. So getting a patient to feel the effect of something quickly
Right.
is extremely important.
Yeah, I guess getting people to have that quick feedback loop would be an
Yep.
interesting way. But like even diving deeper into that specifically, the action component. So yes, now we build a scenario where, you've got the diagnostic, you've got the action plan. But the reason I bring this up is like a lot of macro things happening. Eli Lilly just became the first $1 trillion pharma company because people got so obsessed with GLP-1s instead of working out that now we're taking GLP-1s, which is great. Like, there's a lot of net positive that's coming from that. And that was actually one way to hack user behavior, to say, look, fundamentally, people aren't going to take X action every week. Thus, let's create this, magic pill to some extent that will have X outcome. How do you think about that actionable component? Like, I've been asking people on this show, and it's interesting to see the responses because, like, on the building side, for me, like, we're really focused on biotech and deep tech. So like we build great technology and awesome until we deploy it and we realize like people aren't taking the action because it's intrinsically motivated. And even if they're paying for it, people use Duolingo just because Duolingo shames them, not because they're actually so incentivized to learn a language. How many people actually learn languages from Duolingo? So
Yeah.
like, how do you really see these outcomes other than, I guess, feeling it's a huge one? But
Yeah. I mean, that's like really entrenched in some type of consumer behavior. And my wife and I, who's my co-founder, we talk about this. People relate to symptomatic behavior, connecting the dots on low energy, low libido, weight gain somehow tends to move the needle faster than saying, hey, these are the results that you're going to get. So like there's always within that user journey like some way to continuously stimulate them, but it's crowded, man. I mean, you said it best. Like I don't have all the answers here.
yeah,
I can tell you what tends to work are quick wins, quick results, and then finding things that connect to the individual. Typically what we see is symptomology that connects them the most. Most people are coming to us. I mean, 70% of the patients that come to us are fatigued.
yeah,
Like we have a low energy problem. Telling people that you can solve energy problems is really effective.
it's huge. Yeah,
With women, weight gain is probably the second one. How you can help them with weight gain, unwanted weight gain, and then men, lean muscle mass. How do you improve that? If you're able to connect those dots through like the consumer behavior part, you're going to be more successful than everybody else.
that's fair. I mean, super fair, and would agree to the fullest extent. How do you think about like the stack? So it seems like you guys are pretty all encapsulating uh, in the health world to like really be this all-in-one solution. How far are you thinking of going, and like what do you find actually useful? Because one thing we talk about all the time, and people are probably tired of hearing it to some extent, is like we've got whole genome companies coming out, and we've got blood labs, and we've got MRIs and preventative cancer screenings and so forth, and like it's kind of a mess as to know what do I need, and if I really need everything, now it's like a game and data grab of like who centralizes my data and who owns it and like who's my central hub. How do you think about that stack? 'Cause it seems today diagnostic is blood lab, action is supplementation and therapies.
Yeah, I mean, I listen. Like, I'm a believer in all these components in some capacity. We won't offer something unless we can provide a solution to it. So, take blood for example. We're entrenched in diagnostics. All of our blood has a purpose. Like if we have a single biomarker, we want to be able to tell you how to treat it. We want to tell you how to have a better lifestyle, better diet behind it. So we're not going to, our philosophy is if we're going to have labs, we got to have the solution to it. So we'll continuously bring on things like gut health labs, but we want to be able to provide a solution to it. So for us, that is the core component. And in terms of like the stack itself, like we want to be vertically integrated in every aspect of that. I mean, at some point, our goal is to eliminate in some capacity the Quest and the LabCorps of the world, because I think it's a very vulnerable position to be in.
For sure.
You look at all the companies that have come in the space. I mean, if Quest decides to pull the rug from under us, we are all fucked.
Yeah.
And the same thing with LabCorp. I mean, we've already seen that in some instances. So, we want to be vertically integrated, whether it's a compounding pharmacy, whether it's the laboratory side, but most importantly, we want to be able to provide solutions to the labs.
Yeah, that's super fair. How do you think, I mean, it seems like you have a really interesting angle here, and I'd be fascinated to like walk out of this conversation, understand how you think about the consumer side of like this user journey and like really tailoring to the consumer. I mean, you've clearly like nailed some things here, like convenience and like, yeah, so LabCorp and Quest, existing infrastructure, building on top of it, having it being actionable, creating a good experience. How do you think about that? Like, how do you think about user journey, user acquisition, user trust is like so huge right now, because LabCorp and Quest used to be the infrastructure for a physician, which was the trusted source to go send you to. Now we've got companies that can pour marketing dollars. And in the past, like there's obviously been issues of like, why is America so sick? Well, because pharma can market and we allow pharma marketing. We allow, Cocoa Puffs to spend more money than anybody else. So all our kids eat Cocoa Puffs and whatever else. Now we're kind of put in this position where like people are doing it for altruistic reasons and like good reasons. We're actually making people get blood labs. This is great. How do you think about that as you build this brand and as you are integrated, not integrated, rebuilding the infrastructure of blood labs and just like healthcare period? How do you think through all that stuff?
I mean, listen, you're never going to eliminate the LabCorps and the Quest. There's always going to be a need, and we're going to need them. And the function healths of the world are going to need them. The HIMs are going to need them. The auras and the whoops. So you're always going to need those large vessels. But from a consumer perspective, I think it's all about trust. Like the one thing that we're doubling down on is being the group that connects the dots fully, not just gives you an AI report, not just gives you a chat bot. Like, I mean, you look at some of these models that are billion-dollar companies and you literally cannot virtually speak to a clinician on a one-on-one Zoom. Like their model doesn't allow it.
Yeah.
I think there's a massive component of healthcare that is about listening, is about being heard as a patient. I mean, we talked about all these amazing things that are happening in our society, but they're happening for a reason. They're happening because it was so broken. And so now we're getting overconsumed with all this access. But the one thing that I still think is missing is, especially when it comes to health, you want to be heard and you want to talk to somebody that gets it, because so much of this is beyond data. It's about feedback. It's about closing that feedback loop. And I think that's what we are doing a really good job at.
I think that's a great point, because one thing that I'm curious as to how you think about that I'm seeing happen a lot in this space is like anxiety inducing. We've solved so many problems. We've also started a lot of anxiety. I'll give you an example of me. Like I played pro soccer. I'm like all health and wellness to the max. Do all these technologies at the frontier of it. I did an MRI, and I like learned that I have some disc that's like just a little bit moved. The next day my back's just like on fire. But is this really because I'm feeling it, or it's anxiety or so forth? Or, obviously my wearables example of I wake up, I check my sleep score. Okay, well now I'm ruining my circadian by looking at my phone. And on top of that, it tells me I slept bad, even though I feel great.
Yeah.
How do you, I mean, closing the loop seems to be the answer here, but how do you think about it?
Listen, you nailed it. Like, I mean, there's so much analysis paralysis and just fear that could be connected by connecting with a clinician that is in this space that understands it. And let me give you an example. Like so many of these systems are built on archaic ranges. Like cholesterol is one, testosterone is one, and you look at a report and you go, oh my God, I'm low or I'm high. And all of a sudden you connect with a clinician that gets it. And that's a big deal. Like you might talk to a primary care doc or an internal med doc and they might go, yeah, that range is fine. You're normal, but you don't want to be normal. You want to feel good and you want to be told you're in a good range. But connecting the dots with a clinician sometimes is that missing key. I mean, I've had, lipid profiles, I've had ApoB, I've had cholesterol, I've had testosterone in ranges that if I looked at a paper, I would literally be scared.
Yeah.
And I talk to a clinician, I go, you know what? I'm good with that. You're healthy. You have a good lifestyle. You're getting decent sleep. Your stress is high, obviously, but that might be, but these are ranges that are in decent ranges because so much has not been updated from years ago.
I mean, yeah, the blood labs, I don't know if you know that, like a lot of these labs will look at the ranges that they give you auto-generated is actually based on the average of the last 100,000. And the issue with that is in a country where 60-70% of people are have some kind of chronic issue, that's a big problem to take averages.
Yeah. I mean, over 80% of the country's metabolically unhealthy.
Yeah.
And if you're looking at who's getting like we're in this bubble of like this longevity bubble, this preventative care of people who like really care about our health, but the larger population of who's getting tested is not that.
Yeah.
Like you get outside of our bubble, Nobody knows what a peptide is.
Yeah.
Nobody gives a shit about ApoB.
Yeah.
Even doctors, you'll talk to primary cares, they don't care about a lot of this stuff. So like you're 100% right. The grander population that's actually creating these ranges is a very unhealthy and sick population.
How do you think about that? Like, what do we do? Because this is a great point. Like, this is the conversation we have with everybody is like, it's skews towards the elite. And to be fair, this is the beauty of like technology. Like, a billionaire and I have the same phone, but that took a lot of time, but B, do we really have the same certainty that this happens with this? And like, if we do, how do we make that happen?
One of the best compliments I got was from one of our ambassadors. He's like, dude, you guys are democratizing this space.
Yeah.
And what I took from that, and I think what he meant is like, you're making it accessible and you're making it affordable. And to your point on like everybody coming into the blood space, like they are commoditizing it to a point where it becomes more accessible.
Which is great.
And I always say like, listen, I went to school in Iowa, so I'm from the Midwest. So like we've done our job when we brought longevity and good preventative and proactive care to the flyover states.
Yeah.
What we get to do that is, I mean, that's another consumer behavior, but I think one of the biggest sensitivities, and if you look at it, is cost, and people are having to pay out of pocket for it. But we have a blood test that is 55 biomarkers. You meet with a clinician for 30 minutes. That's $75. If you look at a couple or a family, that's like one dinner at Applebee's, or that's less than your cell phone bill. So we are doing our best to make it accessible and affordable to every American.
That's great. That's huge. I mean, that's going to change the world. Are you a health coach or running a health course and looking to level up your client's experience? With Cyphox Health's at-home blood test, you can deliver lab-quality blood work right to your client's door. Seamlessly ship samples back for fast and actionable results. Personalize every consult with the data that matters. Clients who complete a Cyphox test are 60% more likely to enroll in a paid program after their consult compared to those who only join a sales call. If you're ready to give your clients the edge, go to cyphoxhealth.com/partner. And as a Silicon Fox podcast listener, enjoy 10% off your first bulk order. On the clinician side, one thing that's constantly really problematic here, and we talk about this a little bit more like deep healthcare on the value-based care mechanism, is like we're all trying to say let's optimize for both cost and patient outcomes. And the biggest fault is like, well, clinicians have to train in a value-based care mechanism, because today when you go through med school, you go to residency, then you go become an acting physician, even as a PCP, you're taught to basically have like a framework, at least today, you're taught with a framework to say, if these symptoms, then prescribe X, Y, and Z thing. They're not taught to say, let's really look at ApoB. So it's not necessarily the fault. Like many people practice in evidence-based ways and say, let's look at ApoB, go work out and do resistance training. How do you find clinicians that are empathetic with the consumer, are at like the cutting edge of what's evidence-based, but then like also have certainty that what they're doing is right? Because the second we give autonomy to a clinician to say, you figure out evidence-based, maybe I read a paper differently than you read a paper and you're right, and then I'm practicing in a very wrong way.
Great question. I will tell you there are two things that we look for in every clinician. One is skill set and the other is bedside manners. Skill set is important, but we can teach that. We provide protocols and we provide guidelines. And what we say is they're just guardrails. We want our clinicians to practice in an autonomous state, but here are the guardrails and how we believe the patient should be treated and cared for. We have team leads that monitor that. They monitor charts. We get feedback from our patients through surveys, through Trustpilot. We find out really quickly who the good clinicians are and who aren't. But the one thing you can't teach is bedside manners. You have to be able to communicate clearly and effectively and listen to the patient. Oftentimes, the biomarkers aren't going to tell you what's next. It's going to be the patient's symptoms and their feedback.
On the guardrails component, though, how are those how do you come up? Because my fear in this space, like from my own perspective, is, I'm like giving everybody Peter Attia's Outlive book and always advocating for this, because there is a clear, value there. There's a clear evidence-based approach. But what happens in healthcare on a macro level is like every 30 years, in 30 years, we're going to look back and somebody's going to say, oh, ApoB is the most faulty metric for measuring heart health. And here's why. Probably not. Like that, our thesis, it's not the case. But if that happens, like creating protocols, the reason I guess healthcare works well today, and we call it sick care, is like hospitals are really good at keeping people alive. They're not good at making you healthy or optimizing, but they're good at keeping you alive. And that's kind of like a baseline. So the second we start saying, let's optimize, how do we know for certain it's not going to cause inverse and crazy, like, early onset things and whatever else? So how do you go about these like protocol generation and these kinds of things? Like, how do you set guardrails and reinvent healthcare to some extent?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we've partnered with I consider some of the best medical directors in the business that have been practicing in evidence-based type medicine for decades, not only through white papers but through their own clinical setting. So when we look at that, we find the right clinician that helps us set these protocols and these guardrails that we align with from a philosophical perspective, from a patient perspective, from an organization perspective. Is it scalable? There's a lot of great ideas. There's a lot of great things that are not scalable. Like what Peter Attia does is amazing,
Yeah.
but who's got that type of money to do it? And is that scalable at a
Right.
large level? But so we really hone in on what we think offerings are going to make and move the biggest needle, that is scalable, but then just, protocols of people that we respect, we align with. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all patients, right?
Yeah.
We're all consumers. Like we all know how we want to be treated. I am like the My Pillow guy. Like I take every peptide we offer.
Yeah.
I've tried everything. I know what works for me. I know the user journey well. And that's very important in terms of how you like set out as a clinic and do well. The one thing that we're doing and that I'm super excited about, we just had our first white paper
Yeah.
published for went through IRB, and it was really just around the protocols of what we do. It wasn't just like, hey, let's hone in on testosterone, let's hone in on estrogen, let's hone in on like 50 patients and just see how they've done over 6 months. Diagnostics, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, peptide therapy, just holding patients accountable. And the results were remarkable.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited about adding this clinical and this research arm to what we do, because like anybody can offer a lab, anybody can offer a prescription, anybody can offer a peptide, but actually putting your money where your mouth is, I think is going to be the next generation of where we're at in this healthcare 3.0. And it's not going to just be large general studies. It's going to be which clinic, which platform is doing it differently and can prove it.
One thing that it seems you guys have nailed that, one of some of the archetypes of people we talk to on this show is like investors that are really investing in the cutting edge in healthcare and health tech and biotech. And one of the questions I asked that I think is really interesting is the supply chain, like deliverability, feasibility of certain things. Like we've got, AlphaFold from DeepMind that just came out to basically create computational genomics and biology and create like hyper-specific drugs to every individual based on their sequencing. Fascinating. How do we get it to actually like deliver? This is going to be like one of the biggest problems in the century on the healthcare side to actually do delivery. It seems like you've gotten the closest to my knowledge of an organization that can be so catered to the individual, and you got the blood lab, you've got exactly the protocol, you've got a clinician hand-holding you through this process and giving you all these specific things and adjusting. How do you carry out this like deliverability such that it's such a like still a strong process?
I mean, number one, you got to listen to your patients.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, so much of what we've learned in the last 4 years have come from our community. I can look at the numbers, but Jesus, all I got to do is look at the reviews. And like,
Yeah.
if you had a great experience up until the clinician, but your medication arrived 28 days later, well, it's a pretty broken process.
Yeah.
And for us, it's really been entrenched in the community. Listen to what our clinicians are saying. Our clinicians are great feedback loops. Like
Yeah.
they are getting feedback from the patients, good, bad, and the ugly. And you got to listen to it all, and you got to address it all. For us, I want the most flawless patient experience, like
Yeah.
especially in things that become commoditized. I mean, why is Amazon so good? Because you can order something, it could be there the same day.
Yeah.
Like you're getting the same product, you could go to Walgreens. But if we can close that gap and we can own every vertical to make sure that patient experience is flawless, from the diagnostic to the website to the community on Instagram to the clinician to the actual product arriving at your doorstep, we're going to win.
But the how, like I mean, agreed, right? But how do you carry this stuff out to actually make it such that it is such a great experience? I was saying like you're not outsourcing certain of the supplementation, like you're building in house, or like because that part's hard to me is like it's not like we're again not like we're saying here's a specific drug that is specific for you, right? We're not there yet, but we're saying like okay, you need vitamin D, boom, you've got vitamin D a week later, right? I guess like to some extent you can build like an Amazon routing type process. Like what have you guys built today such that like I go through the process, I get a protocol from clinician, a week later I've got my stack. How was it there a week later? Like, what's
I mean, obviously we've nailed the front end,
yeah,
right? And then as I mentioned earlier, we've been quietly building our own
yeah,
compounding pharmacy to close that loop.
yeah,
If you looked at our churn over the last 2 years, the number one reason of churn is the things that we can't control,
yeah.
and that was the compounding pharmacies,
Which was
especially
time? Or what was the issue?
time.
Okay.
Yeah, time and service.
Yeah,
And I can tell you it's an industry-wide problem. It's not just us.
yeah,
And, Katie and I, my wife and co-founder, we just said we can't do it anymore.
yeah,
Like this is our reputation as much as it, because at the end of the day, patients don't give a shit what pharmacy you use. They are an extension of you.
right.
But if I'm having a patient go through an amazing process and all of a sudden let's just take their GLP-1 medication arrives 28 days later, well, I just lost them.
Yeah,
And so for us, it was building out our own compounding pharmacy in Nashville. We're now up to 38 states. We just got our sterile approval about 3 weeks ago, so that's going to
well,
be a game
congrats.
changer. We have 6,000 square feet that is ready to roll. We have another 6,000 below us that once we, turn it on even more and we start taking on a phase two, like outside business, we'll inhibit that space. But that really for us has been the biggest piece, just like actually doing what we needed to do.
I mean, yeah, that's fascinating, and I mean, that's like the secret sauce as to how some of this stuff is working. On the economic, like unit economics, right? Just economics front, one of the biggest difficulties, and I guess I probably want to silo healthcare and like the space of like consumer focused health, because those businesses are very, very different from like a business and economics perspective. How do you think through like what models work, how to really build durable, sustainable businesses? I mean, again, kind of even building off of this understanding and underlying potential truth that labs, constantly drive down. And so, yes, now we've got, we can sell supplements and we can like really capitalize the fact that we're giving you good results and making you feel better. How do you think through business models here to like build sustainable businesses? Just because like it may sound like a superficial question, but the reality is like in healthcare, everything is driven by unit economics. And the reason we've had such bad outcomes in healthcare is because we're not operating under a value-based model. We're operating on fee for service. People can't pay for services. So now I will do more services and cause you more harm. But in this space, it's a bit different. So how do you think through that?
I mean, I think it's a challenging process. I mean, I think, I look at where CPMs and CACs have gone in the last year and they've gone up.
Yeah.
And that's because so many people are in the space. I mean, if I had a concern, it's just going to be like, at what point as a consumer do we just get fatigued with all this wellness? I mean,
Yeah.
all the gizmos and all the gadgets. It's like, what's actually helping me and what's not? For us, we constantly have to find ways to provide value to our patients.
Yeah.
And as soon as we stop providing value, whether it's price, whether it's a service, whether it's an outcome, then we've lost that person, and it's really hard to gain them back. So, to me, it's not just like one thing. It's constantly evolving
Yeah.
with the consumer, constantly evolving with the market. You know, I think having the benefit of having a pharmacy that we're going to really be launching here soon is the arbitrage on pricing. I mean, being able to do combo products that are very unique, that are extremely expensive right now, and then combining those services into one, I think is going to be a game changer for us.
I want to talk about a staple in my routine. I've been using creatine for years, not just when I'm trying to hit a PR in the gym, but because it's foundational for how my body recovers and how my brain operates under fatigue. The hardest part about supplementation is knowing what to take. It's actually taking it. Consistency is the only thing that matters. If you miss a day because you're traveling or because mixing a powder is a hassle when you're running out the door, you lose some of the benefit. That's why I'm all in on the new creatine chews from Momentous. I've started using these daily, and the convenience is a game changer. I notice that when I'm consistent with these, my recovery between workouts is faster, and I don't get that mental fog late in the day. Creatine isn't just for building muscle. It's become a daily essential for your strength, focus, recovery, aging, and cognitive performance. And now, Momentous is making your daily creatine routine even easier with new creatine chews. Each chew delivers exactly 1 gram of Creapure creatine monohydrate, the gold standard, single source from Germany and NSF certified for sport. It's trusted by Olympic athletes, pro sports teams, and elite military operators. You know exactly what you're putting into your body. Whether you're training, working, or traveling, this is performance without pause, made to support your body and your brain every single day. Right now, Momentous is offering our listeners up to 35% off your first order with promo code SiliconFox. Go to livemomentous.com and use promo code SiliconFox for up to 35% off your first order. That's livemomentous.com, promo code SiliconFox. How do you think through that business's durability though? I guess like this, it was an interesting part about health, and the reason, fee for service made sense is like you want to drive people to keep coming, right? At some point, because that's the business is sustainable. It's like, yes, we gave you this outcome, and now you're healthy. Like now what? And so that's why like value-based care is struggling so much, is because okay, well, if I'm paying for like at-home monitoring to avoid a sickness, well, what if they get so cured? They have like, they don't need monitoring. They don't need a sickness. They have nothing. Now, this is not realistic. I'm not claiming this is going to happen, because that would assume our 8 billion person population is just healthy in an instant. But how do you think through that process? Like at some point throughout the journey, do you now get into optimization? Do you now get into like the much more biohacker like fitness, go the full route
Yeah.
way, get into like nutrition, get into these kinds of things? Like how do you think about creating a durable process?
Yeah, I mean, there's kind of like two buckets. One is like the people who are existing customers and that are achieving better states. Like health is always evolving. Like
Yeah.
I've never met somebody who is healthy that doesn't want to be healthier.
Yeah.
And the same goes for unhealthy that doesn't want to be healthy. So like
Sure.
you're constantly trimming the fat, literally and physically. But I also think like we're in this bubble. There's such an underwhelming amount of people who are not participating in this.
Yeah.
And then the other side is not participating in telehealth. I mean, that's all we are. We're a virtual health provider. I think I've heard and seen studies that, by 2040, like 90% of what we do from a healthcare perspective is going to be done virtually.
Yeah.
Anything that basically doesn't have to be hands-on. So we're not even a fraction there.
Yeah.
Not even a fraction. So there's so many untapped users. But I also just think that people, once you hit a status and once you're trying to be healthier, I look at my friends like Eric Hinman, for example.
Yeah.
The dude's always evolving.
Yeah.
They're always trying new things. They're always trying to get to a peakier peak,
Yeah.
And the same thing with unhealthy people. Like I was a victim of like being unhealthy, and I was 55 pounds overweight, and I was like, oh, I'm good. I'm comfortable with my skin. Deep down, I wasn't.
Yeah.
So exposing a layer of trying to get people to just live healthier is always going to be something there.
That's fair. I mean, completely. I'm part of that category, right? Like to some extent, where I'm looking up optimize. And what's hard about the peakier peak is like the fact that it's so frontier. I mean, we have like to some extent you get so peaked that there's the individuals are like, we're talking the thousands, tens of thousands, and now it's like frontier research to figure it out.
Well, there's also a version too where they're fearful of losing that.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, we don't play to fear.
Yeah.
We really play to just feeling better and living longer. But there's definite fear in a lot of individuals who are like, I don't ever want to lose this edge. We get the question all the time, like, do I got to be on testosterone replacement the rest of my life? No, you don't. But you know what you felt like when you're in the 200, 100 levels of your testosterone levels. How do you feel now? And that's just kind of like self-induced fear, but there is a reality. Like going from 200 to 800 to 1200 is a massive difference.
Yeah.
We're talking a Ford to a Ferrari.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, you feel it massively, and it's a quick feedback loop. I want to understand a little bit about your founder journey. I think we talked a lot about the macro here, what you guys are doing. You talked about a little bit on your personal level as to what inspired this, but what's been the founder journey from kind of zero to today? And you guys have grown so fast, and biggest upsides, biggest downsides.
I mean, the biggest upside is setting goals and milestones, but building a community that is just like, I feel like we have an army behind us.
Yeah.
We're like kind of one of the last companies standing in our space that hasn't gone venture or private equity back.
Yeah.
So like there's a little bit of like grittiness and a little bit of that David versus Goliath story. So that's the upside. Like getting, like I was a patient that suffered from all these things that these new patients are suffering from. And I wouldn't say I cured myself. I still am evolving.
Yeah.
But I went from 0 to 100 personally, physically and mentally, and I know what that felt like. So seeing people go through that process initially is really the gift that keeps giving.
Yeah.
Getting, you know, Trustpilot reviews or just feedback on Instagram of like, man, you saved my marriage.
Yeah.
I had a sexless marriage. Now I don't, you know, and
Yeah.
that's a big portion of it. Or I hadn't seen the inside of a gym in a year, and now all of a sudden I can't get enough of it. Like those are the things that keep you going. And those are the intangibles that me as a founder who's very entrenched in the business, I love. The downside is like, there's a lot of stress that goes into this.
For
You
sure.
know, I mean, I feel like I say this, I get more gray hairs like by the month
Yeah.
than I've had in, you know, the last 10 years. And, you know, I'm a very active dad and a very active husband. My wife's in the business too. She's my co-founder. But, you know, sometimes I'm not as present as I want to be with my kids.
Yeah.
And that's the downside.
What were some of the biggest assumptions that going through this process, both on a personal level or even on like a business health level, that you had going into it that were kind of broken just for people that are potentially building in the same space as
I mean, my first assumption was it was going to be easier than what it was.
that's
I mean, I
fair.
think every founder, every entrepreneur goes into it like, I'm going to do this and it's going to be great. And it's going to, you know, you see all these amazing founder stories but you do not see what's behind that. And like, there is a grind, there is an obsession. I've never felt more relentless at what I want to do and pursue. And you know, I go to bed thinking about my business. I wake up thinking about my business. Hell, I dream about my business. I come out of some dreams like, shit, did we actually do that? Or
Yeah.
I can't actually, I got to ask my wife, did we actually finish that? Or do we still have that as a project? Or did we accomplish that? And she's like, no, we haven't.
Yeah.
So like the obsession to be good and the obsession to continue to grow and evolve is something that I underestimated.
Yeah.
I've always been an entrepreneur. I mean, for you know, last 12 years, but this has been the hardest business. Like building a brand um, is different than just selling a widget.
How do you go about like one thing that's really disputed and debated, and I think it's unique to the health space, in terms of at least the outcomes of it, is like organizational structure and decisions. How do you think about that?
It's hard.
Because you guys, you're growing and
Yeah.
fast, and like, what do you think about that?
I mean, I did an interview on the way here,
Yeah.
and you outgrow some of your people.
Yeah.
I've pretty much relied on, you know, hire slow, fire fast mentality.
Yeah.
Cultural fits are important. You know, nobody is going to care about the business as much as me and my wife. Like
Yeah.
I don't, but you got to be fractionally close. Like,
Yeah.
and, you know, you got to live, eat and breathe what we do. And I think org structure and talent and putting people in the right place to succeed is very hard. But it's also a skill set and giving people freedom and autonomy to honestly to do well and to fuck up. You learn a lot more from your mistakes. I found that anybody who is loyal, coachable, that has a relentless pursuit of like being better always does really well. I mean, outside of the clinician role and outside of maybe an engineer that has to have a exact skill set, you can teach a lot of what we do.
That's fair. That's fair. And on the organizational component, like how do you think through structuring a Navy SEAL type org that moves this fast and does these kinds of things?
It's hard. You find really quickly the people you have. Like it is a brutal world when we're like, hey, we're going to launch this. And then all of a sudden it's like, no, we're not going to launch that. We're pivoting to this because this is more important. You find out really quick what your people have. And I don't know, man. For me, it's just like, as a leader, I have to be optimistic. I have to be positive and they have to feel that. And I also have to be critical and giving people really guidance and poignant advice is imperative.
I mean, I can even feel it, like the energy component, and like there's obviously motivational, I don't know, aura to some extent. How do you get people to buy in even fractionally or so forth? Like, I think what's nice about this space is that like you're saving lives, you're helping people, you're optimizing in something that's meaningful, a lot more than some kind of B2B AI SaaS communication tool. But how do you do that?
I I mean, first of all, you get them on all your therapies.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, like
they experience the product.
I listen. I believe in that.
Yeah,
Like, you know, I do think this would be harder if I was selling a gym bag. Like,
yeah,
people really, every one of our employees, every one of our contractors get access to our everything we do at no cost.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great way to get people participating in like what we do. But you know, we are fortunate that we're in a space that is changing lives. Like if you read through our reviews, they're game changing, and people feel that. So, me as a founder, like this is just who I am. I'm 100. I'm going 100 all the time.
Yeah.
I think that's contagious as well. My
For
wife
sure.
is the same thing. Like if we were very remote, offsite, you know, not participating in the business, people would pull away. But we literally back up everything we say we're going to do, and we're very honest. I think being honest and approachable to your people is important.
What do you think the biggest mistake has been so far? How many years sorry, like, what's the quick logistics of the business you guys shared on?
September 21 was when Blokes was launched. So we saw our first patients in September of 21. Joy was launched in March of 22.
Okay,
So
so
you do the
recent.
math.
Yeah,
I started losing count. You said the biggest mistake.
yeah,
Damn, that's a good one. I think just from a foundational perspective, I'm not a tech guy, so
yeah,
like I'll be the first, but I've been in healthcare for such a long time. I feel like I'm very good at marketing, very good at creative, very good at understanding the compliance of the business, but I'm not a tech guy. Like we probably had a pretty shaky and leaky tech foundation, and
yeah,
that we've been trying to, you know, really become a tech forward company over the last 2 years.
yeah,
So the first 2 years we weren't that. I mean, our first patient, you had to call us. Like, I mean, that wasn't that long ago. Like Zoom was there, calendars were there. Like, so when we built it, we were like, we're going to be the company that is focused on service. And then you realize really quickly, you got to be tech and service based.
yeah.
Like all of it has to be dialed in. And I would say, you know, I've said this before, like we're to some extent we're changing the tire as the car's going, which is very challenging. But now we're at a point where like, okay, we have a really good foundation, and now we can start building on it. But that was the biggest mistake. We got hit in the face pretty hard by not having a good tech stack.
Is that the biggest thing that you'd probably change if you had to go back?
Probably. Um, I think the other piece would be having key people in key areas and scaling. Like I always say, like everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face, as Mike
Of
Tyson
course.
saying.
Yeah,
Like we want to, like as any business, you're going to have that happen no matter what. But eliminating as many as those as possible, you know, getting over, um, you know, just making less mistakes. And I think probably the biggest mistake I've had is taking on too much. My wife taking on too much, being in too many decisions. And we did that because we didn't have enough strategic and key people in the
mm,
right positions.
yeah, that's fair. I mean, that's a big one. Give people autonomy, and you believe in like the enables like hire someone, trust them enough, and enable them to just have
100%.
full autonomy.
100%. I mean, I think it's got to be earned.
Yeah,
You know, I think you can tell pretty quickly if somebody has those chops, and the skill set matters there. You know, but I could care less to be in every meeting. Like I don't want to be, and I'm not now. But there was a day where I was, and it's very very stressful. It's very time consuming, and you know, if you think your mind's going, imagine trying to be in every meeting.
yeah, that's fair. Kind of switching back here in terms of just macro of your business, healthcare, the space. I want to talk a little bit about predictions and looking out here as to from what you're seeing and how this plays out. What do you think the next thing in healthcare is that's going to use consumer bypass to get entered into the market? Like what I mean by that is like blood labs were always healthcare focused. You had to get it prescribed or, there'd be some reason you'd go get it. Now you can go buy it. Do you think there's a next thing that starts like that jumps into this consumer bypass that right now is a lot more clinical and what is it?
I mean, I think you're going to start seeing big pharma go right direct to consumer soon, eliminating PBMs. That doesn't really, you know, mess with us that much, but I think you're going to start seeing the Lillies and the Novos go direct to patients, and
Interesting.
that would be a big deal when you start eliminating insurance and PBMs. That will be a very very big deal in our space.
Yeah. How do you think AI plays into all this? But
AI is,
but also for you guys, maybe even specifically for you guys.
yeah. I mean, I think that's another thing we might be over indexing at the moment
Yeah.
outside of blood. Um, you know, there's still a very critical component to healthcare, and that's the clinician.
Yeah.
AI to me has just made us sharper, more efficient, and better on our operations, our automations, guiding the clinician. I think the company that's going to win the most with AI is somebody that's going to co-pilot the doctor, co-pilot the patient. If the patient has data and knowledge prior to a clinician appointment, it makes that so much more efficient. And if the clinician has the exact amount of data, and from a clinician perspective, it makes it more efficient as well.
Do you think that either you guys or organizations in this space should be AI native in the sense of you are building your own co-pilots, or you rather trust these larger companies to go and build these co-pilots for you that get integrated? And how do you think about that?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, take it like, this is probably a bad example, but take like Shopify, for example. They give you this amazing ecosystem to build on, but then you taking your own protocols and building it within that, your own content. So like, I think it could be a little bit of both. I mean, I'm kind of agnostic to it. Like, we don't have the resources to go build out our own infrastructure right now. I think a lot of companies are doing that and doubling down, but you still got to get the patient.
Right.
Like, you can have this amazing AI tool, but if patients aren't coming to you, it doesn't really matter. So for me, I think a hybrid would do pretty well. And that's what we're doing already. You know, we're using existing technology and then inputting our data and our outputs and our inputs and then letting the clinicians do the work from there.
Well, this is a really interesting point on the getting the patient, because we've talked a lot in this conversation about like building out this ecosystem. And once you get them, and it's rare that once if they leave, they come back. So once you get them, you often get them, and given they have a short feedback loop, they feel it, they stay. It gives you a lot of like, I guess, autonomy and power as to like what's given, what's fed, which tools are used. What like in the next few years, what do you want to add to these patients? Whether it's on the stat question again, or even just like on the experience side of things, what are you really focused on improving that once you have them? Like, is it building an AI co-pilot PCP for the clinician to work with them and be even more specific? Is it more supplements? Is it, what is it?
I think a big component for us is proving to our patients that we're doing really well with their own data. Like, I think all that is great. Like, AI is great, but like, this is why we're going to be doubling down on research. Is like, a lot of times you'll have a patient for a year, right? And they'll be on a therapy, and take TRT, for example. And they'll go, I don't know if I'm feeling it anymore, because they forgot a year ago they were feeling like shit.
Yeah.
But one thing that we can do through white papers and research is prove that our methodology, our protocols are better than anybody else. And I think consumers are getting so smart. Like, take, for example, Supco, for example.
Yeah.
5 years ago, nobody gave a shit what's in their supplements.
Yeah.
Now everybody's going, what's in my supplements? We're doing all these Amazon things and half the creatine doesn't work, or
Right.
there's some type of chemical in it. And that is mattering more and more. It's going to happen to healthcare at the same time. When you look at all the players that are in this space, HEMS, Function, Superpower, like, who's putting money into white papers?
Yeah.
Like, I want to know, okay, if it's the Blokes and Joy protocol, what's the likelihood of me actually feeling better? That's what we're going to prove.
I love that. What do you think of that as being this next wave? It's funny enough, this was like exactly my conversation with a few entrepreneurs yesterday. Was one of our company's products is providing lab type validation data with something with tech that nobody else has, so nobody else could prove in the past. And it seems like a pretty big macro tailwind is validation data as marketing data, because not for the sake of gamification, but because it's true. And like, we've gotten to the point where 5 years ago, you could have just spent the most in marketing and gotten the customer. A few years ago, you could have made the biggest claims. And now we've got all this controversy with claims being not true, not verified, and all these things. And now it's like, just show me lab data.
Yeah.
Is that the new like marketing gold standard? Like, how do you think about that?
Well, I like to think we're ahead of the game in a lot of things we've done.
Yeah.
We prescribed our first GLP-1 in September of 21.
Oh, wow.
We were doing peptide therapy well before anybody knew what the hell a peptide was. I think this for us is going to be a game changer. I don't give a shit what everybody else does. Like, I know this to my core, like, this is going to be a big deal. I think, like, as I see the market get more saturated, like, if you got 10 companies offering TRT, well, what's the difference?
Right.
the difference is the outcomes. The difference is the protocol. The difference is the experience. All that packaged into one, and then actually validating that, I think is a huge difference. Like if I can literally take our data points, point to a white paper that's not done by me, that's reviewed by an IRB, and point to the improvement of people's energy, people's biomarkers, people's weight, and quantitatively, qualitatively prove that, I can market the hell against HIMSS.
That's fascinating. I think that's fair. How do you think that becomes like super integrated into the business as like people start to build out R&D teams to have optimal protocols, or is it more to just say like, because how do you generalize? I guess that's one hard question is, I guess this is kind of how AI is built to some extent. But if you were to say, 100 people followed our protocols and they had X and Y improvements, well, I'm 101, and the whole point is that it's personalized, so it's going to be different for me.
Yeah.
I guess that it's the same argument for inference and how AI works. Like, right, it trains off of data and then it makes inference on other perspectives. But unless it's done at massive scales, like how do you think about that? Do you start building internal teams?
Yeah, we already are. We already have, I think, two of the best research scientists in the game. Ben Bickman is one. He's a PhD out of BYU, and Paul Reynolds, another PhD. They're both focused intently on inflammation, metabolic health. So really, really like right where we sit. And then we have, clinicians that have a lot of research-based backgrounds. So for us, we're already on the way. I mean, we just published our first white paper this week. I'll send it to you.
Please, yeah.
We took 50 cohorts and we analyzed just through their protocols of what they did with their biomarker data and their symptomatic behavior. I mean, the results were astounding. Like they're legitimately remarkable. And now we have about 12 more that are in the queue. So they'll be dropping throughout 2026. So, to us, like we're putting our money where our mouth is. We're investing in the research and the outcomes of this. What's interesting is like everybody in the space who's been practicing in the space kind of knows the stuff works, right?
Yeah.
But nobody's validating it.
And like how much does it work? And like what does work, what does work mean?
Yeah, listen, like one study we published might not mean anything to you.
Right.
The next one might mean everything to you. Yeah. Like if you're somebody who's like, I got so much energy, well, this study might not be for you. But if we do a study that's on, maybe lean muscle mass, like, well, that might be great, So I think what we're going to be doing is a variety of different studies that appeal to our demographic and what we're offering. And we're going to be an inch wide and a mile deep in research.
I love it. I mean, yeah, I saw it. I don't know much about the product and can't say much, but like AG1 poured however many millions into a few of these like large double-blind studies.
That's a great example. Like you have this green powder that means nothing, right? Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, you bought it because you saw Eric Hinman pushing it, or you saw, some big influencer, right? But at the end of the day, I think consumers are over that shit.
Yeah.
They're oversaturated with ambassadors. They're oversaturated with influencer marketing. They're oversaturated with ads. Tell me how it's actually going to improve me. We don't have the megaphone that an AG1 has or that a HIMSS has, but we're quietly building this army and we're quietly doing it the right way. I truly believe this research piece is going to be huge.
I guess where I'm, I agree with this, and this is like one of our product lines. This is great to hear. But what's interesting would be like the next step is I constantly have a fear in this health, like I'm in the health and wellness community, so I'm part of it. That I have the fear is that like keeping it really rooted in science. I think like that's just a really big call out. That's important. Is like I think when a lot of brands are going to start hearing research, they're going to start putting out a lot of research. And is it going to be really research? And it's going to be like, well, it's published in a journal. It's like in Argosiv and it's not actually published, but you can find it and people think it's published. They don't know the difference in Argosiv and an actual published, PubMed or something. So that's gonna be a big thing, I think, moving forward is like, how do we carry out true trials that are actual like research baked? And this is part of the, like we say a lot of, like, at least I say a lot of negative things about academia and the process, but now that this is gonna get so saturated, at some point, in however many years, that's going to be a big part of it.
I think, what we're building is going to be hard for 99% of the companies we compete with. To have like a built-in clinical team or research team that is rowing in the same direction, that believes in it. BYU is helping with this. So like we have like an educational background. I think it's harder to actually do it the right way than actually just say we're going to do it.
Right.
To your point, like, I mean, you could send out a shitty type form survey to your
Exactly.
audience, be
Yeah.
like, 95% of our patients said they
Yeah. Yeah.
loved it, like, so there's going to be education too in that, like how you differentiate your research from somebody else's, because like it's not the same thing. But when we can point to a white paper that's not, you know, essentially us, that's reviewed by other peers, I think that's going to matter in the long run. I think consumers, just like supplements, are going to get smarter and smarter and smarter.
And I don't even know if you're thinking about this, but one thing that's super exciting about this is adding a whole new layer to data on like clinical outcomes of things to say like, hey, we not only it worked, but outside of this, we can also now manipulate this data in so many different ways to find out what else was actually working that we weren't focused on
It's a
in
great
this
point.
research component. That's interesting
Absolutely.
because like, you know, if you're having people take more blood labs
Yep.
and you're correlating to something and you're like tracking testosterone, whatever else you're tracking, you're now able to say like, well, this cohort that had this, you know, this geography, maybe like we're starting to tie it to like air quality or something
Yeah.
completely out of the out.
Yeah.
We didn't have this much data before, and now we do. So we kind of start to have a lot of net new findings.
I mean, the beautiful thing is like you can do whatever you want. If you have the means, and we're doing perspective stuff right now. We're going to be doing prospective studies. We're going to be doing brand partnerships with their audience and analyzing them from a clinical standpoint. So
Yeah,
just and I'm just making this up, take an app that focuses on fitness
yeah,
and maybe it's weight training. And
yeah.
then we provide the labs and this, the qualitative part of the symptomatic behavior. And we combine those protocols and those programs
This is
together.
great.
Not only can they market it, we can market it, but we're also getting the benefit of a white paper. And you think about women, for example, women who don't weight train, and that's a big issue with perimenopause and menopause. Finding a program that's dedicated to women, using our science and our research and combining them together, it's like it's a marketer's wet
Yeah,
dream.
that's huge. That's huge. I'm excited about this. This is definitely makes me bullish on the industry. What's just kind of wrapping up here? What's just the thing you're most excited about? Whether it's both your business, healthcare, AI, maybe even personal in the next 5 to 6 years.
I mean, this is going to sound redundant, but it's the research arm of what we're
Yeah,
doing. I was a little nervous, because like as a founder, somebody who believes in this stuff, so much, you're like, is it really working? Are we getting the right feedback? Is the biomarkers actually improving? Because we think they are.
right.
Everybody tells us they are. But this is to me, it's an exciting, like the geek in me is like, man, this is awesome.
Yeah,
Like never in a million years did I ever think I'd be the one behind white papers and pushing for those as much as we have, and then having an arm that can actually do it. But I think validating what we're doing is very exciting. And honestly, I think we're one of the first to do it. And
yeah,
on this platform side, like obviously there's educational institutes, there's
yeah, yeah,
universities who have been that's all they do. But to put it into a consumer perspective on a platform side of what we offer, I think is game changing.
yeah. I mean, you also I don't know if you like think about it. You have patient selection too. Like you have the patients,
Totally.
so you can run analysis on your existing patients, whatever else, which is
Yeah.
fast.
I mean, listen, like I'm super bullish on the female side of testosterone.
Yeah,
It's a massively underserved community. It's been neglected for
just because of stigma.
forever.
Because of stigma, or why?
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's no FDA approval for testosterone replacement for women.
Yeah,
Women weren't even included in studies for years,
yeah,
so like it's an underserved market. It's a market that is also just like waking the hell up.
right.
Like women are realizing like, man, maybe my OB/GYN didn't give me good guidance.
Yeah,
Maybe my primary care didn't give me good guidance. I mean, some of the biggest SRIs that are being prescribed are in those settings, not doctors that are focused in perimenopause and menopause. And the results that we have anecdotally from our clinicians, from our patient community on testosterone replacement are insane. So I'm
awesome.
super excited to start looking into the research side of women and the effects of testosterone on them, because it's from an outsider's perspective, it's been life changing. It
Yeah,
saved marriages.
yeah. Wow, I love it, Josh. This has been a pleasure. Thank you so
Loved it,
much for
man.
hopping on the Silicon Fox
Go all
podcast.
day, man.
Oh yeah.